This video is brought to you by none other than Hire Heroes, you guys. Hire Heroes is your one-stop shop when it comes to virtual staffing and making sure that you have qualified talent with your business. One thing that I love about Hire Heroes, you guys, is they've actually gone through the process already of vetting and making sure that your staff member is well trained to best fit your needs. Whether you need help with social media work, posting things on your accounts, responding to people that send messages to your social media accounts, whether you need help with data entry or a multitude of other things that they're qualified to do, Hire Heroes has got you covered. If you're having trouble finding quality talent and number two, affording to be able to run payroll for that talent, Hire Heroes has got you covered with an affordable alternative to have a virtual assistant working for your business. There's a link down in the description of this video to where you can learn more about getting your own VA through Hire Heroes. I certainly recommend it. They're what we use in our business for all of our virtual assistant needs, and you will want to make sure that you check them out today. Hey, what's up, guys? Christian Brindle here, and I am back with another video with somebody doing big things in our industry. I'm here with, many of you might know her name. If you don't, it's a pleasure to be able to introduce her to you. I'm here with Buffie Bain out in South Carolina. Buffie Bain is a former pharmacy tech, and Buffie Bain has been in the insurance business as an agent specializing in Medicare for the past 6 years. And Buffie is a top producer, and Buffie is somebody that is an absolute rock star. She's developed a very, very impressive business and a book of business without buying any leads whatsoever. So Buffie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I am doing awesome. I am just super excited that we finally were able to make this happen. For those of you who don't know, I have been begging Buffie to do a video with me for probably like 2 years now. So I'm very happy that we were finally able to get this done. And, you know, because she's a wealth of knowledge and her information is something that everybody needs to hear from. So Buffie, for anybody that might not be familiar with your story, take us back a little bit and talk about what made you transition from the pharmacy world into getting your license and being an agent. Tell us the story.
Okay, so thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited. So whenever I was a pharmacy tech for 23 years, and I always worked part-time. In my adult life, I had only worked 4 or 5 years full-time. I was a full-time mama, part-time pharmacy tech. And in the 2016 election cycle, every time they would have a debate, people would come into the pharmacy and they'd say, well, what's going to happen to my Medicaid? What's going to happen to my Medicare? What's going to happen to my marketplace? And they came into the pharmacy asking because they were genuinely concerned. Mm-hmm. Well, year after year, pharmacists are voted as like most trustworthy profession, right? And so I had a real strong desire to get them the information that they asked, because I knew that they were asking me because they trusted me. Like they came in and they trusted me. And so I started doing a little digging around and I couldn't find the answer. So since I just worked part-time, I thought, well, I'll go to insurance school. Surely I'll find the answer there. So I did my little 4 days in insurance school. And what I learned was that I still did not know what they were going to do with these people's insurance, right? Because, we didn't learn that.
Yeah.
And so I finished up the course and I didn't do anything with it. I just thought, well, that was a waste,
Right.
And so I really didn't think too much else of it. And then AEP came along and we had a girl that was sitting at the table in my pharmacy. And every day that she was in there, she would always talk to me and she'd say, you'd be really good at this. I see you with the customers. You really have the personality for this. You'd be really good at this. And I was like, girl, I want to still know insurance. I'm a pharmacy tech. And so I kind of just blew her off. Well, she gave her upline my information. And so he called me at work one day and I was like, oh Lord, I don't want to do that, So a little time passed and I was in a rough situation at work, and I had a pharmacist that I worked with that was just a mean girl. And I do not function well in a mean girl, I'm redheaded, I not function girl. I don't function like that. And so I was thinking, I got to get out of here. So one of the hospitals, a couple of counties over, had a job opening, and it was for a pharmacy tech, but it explicitly said insurance experience required. And I thought, oh my God, I'll be a shoe in for that. So it was a Friday night, and I started making my resume, and I was so excited. I was thinking, I got this job. So as I made my resume, I realized they're not even going to call me because I put on here that I went to insurance school, but I don't have a license. So I got on to, I think it was called PSI. It was who South Carolina used for testing, and they had a test that Tuesday. Well, I had finished that little insurance school thing. I think it was in September. And then this was like March 25th. So it had been several months. And I threw it all away because it was a waste. I didn't keep any of it. And so I found a little stack of flashcards that I'd made. It was like index cards, and it was maybe 60 or so. So I did those over the weekend and did a lot of praying. And on that Tuesday, I went and took the test. And it was insane because when I pressed the button, I knew I had passed it. Like, I was giddy. I was like, I just killed this thing. But I will say that before I went in, I went to the bathroom and I prayed, and I was like, Lord, I know that you mean good for me. And if me getting my insurance license is in your will, I know I'll walk out of here with them today. And if it's not what you want for me, then I'll just have to make this mean girl situation right at work, but I want to do what you want me to do. So I went in there and I knocked it out of the park. Like, on my first try, I made an 84 plus, right? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I did this thing. And I couldn't believe it because, it had been like 6 months.
Right.
So I walk out of there with them. I put my resume in. It takes weeks. I'm talking probably, I put my resume in at the end of March, and they didn't call me until, I think it was the end of June. I had almost forgotten about that job. They called me and I went for the interview, and then they did my second interview while I was there. Well, they took care of everything. On my way home, they called and offered me that job, and it was more money than I'd ever made in my life. But by the time I got home, I was like, I've been in the car for an hour and 15 minutes. I do not want to do this 2 times a day. And you're talking about somebody who had worked 17 hours a week, and I worked 10 minutes from home. Like, if I wanted to go home on lunch break, I could, right?
Yeah.
And so that was going to be a big difference. And so they offered me this job, and my husband was like, Buffy, you are not going to be happy with that. You are going to go from working 17 hours a week to being 55 hours a week out of the home. You're not going to be happy with that. And so while I was in the car that day, Rob, my upline, calls, and he goes, hey, are you ready to do something with this insurance? And I go, yeah, I am. And he was like, what? And so he was like trying to scramble and like get me to do it all because I drug my feet for so long. And I was like, well, I can't really do it right now because I'm fixing to go to the beach for 2 weeks, and then we're going to go to Disney World, and maybe I can kind of catch up with you in August, because I didn't have like any real comprehension of like what that time period was.
Right.
And this was in 2017 when they still used to slaughter us on those certifications. I don't know if you remember this, but back then, I mean, the first time I took Humana, it took me 2 full days to do it. Because back then you put the plans in there, and they would actually, some of the plan like details would be in the questions.
Right.
And so, they were killer back then. And, I had to get the AHIP done and all of that. So I finally got all of that done about 3 weeks into August. Yeah. So, that's how I got in. And it was such a natural transition because I was already used to using Medicare.gov. We used Medicare.gov in the pharmacy. If we'd have somebody that would come up and, they'd have a question, or how come my insurance isn't covering this or whatever. I mean, we'd pull it up and say, well, we didn't know anything about how they could change or whatever, but we would pull it up and look for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, like there's so many people that I've gotten to know over the past couple of years that have transitioned from healthcare in some regard. Maybe it's from the pharmacy world, like people that I think about in the pharmacy world is obviously you're the first person. Norma Johnson, somebody I think about people that were RNs, travel nurses like Patricia St. Louis, a lot of people like that. I think there's just a pretty general understanding of insurance you need to have to be in the healthcare industry. And so it's probably an easy transition. Would you agree with that?
I felt like it was a very natural transition, and I am so grateful for my background in pharmacy because, you know, it doesn't take me but just a minute or two to put a drug list in, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how bad they mangle it when they're calling it out on the phone. I generally still know what they're talking about because, I mean, that was my life for 23 years. And I still have my pharmacy tech license. I keep them because, there's always there's so much uncertainty. You don't know from year to year. I know right before I came in 2017, I think it was maybe in 2014, they'd had that really large commission cut in ACA.
Right.
And God knows I don't ever want to have to go back to the pharmacy, but I would, but I hope that I will have made enough money that I don't, if this all just goes to pot, hopefully I'll just have made enough money that I can just float in the pool and float in the pool.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit, right? So you start doing the business and you're starting to see some success. How is Buffy building her business, right? Because I know one thing that I've heard you say many times. I've seen you talk about it, on some Facebook groups from time to time. We've talked about it privately. Building your business without leads. What does that look like? How can an agent go about building their business without leads?
So I do want to say this. Like I started I wrote my very first one on September the 30th of 2017, right? And people had me so built up for AEP. And I want to say this for the new agent that's out there. I thought, well, I have my insurance license on October the 15th. People are just going to start, ringing my phone off the hook, right?
Yeah.
Well, on October the 15th, I didn't get one call, not one, because I hadn't done any marketing, right? Nobody knew I sold insurance. And so I actually got a call on the 16th, and it was somebody that I knew, and I wrote that it was a T65. And then I didn't get another call for 10 days. It was on October the 26th. And when I went to bed on October the 26th, I was like, I have to do something. And so I called all of my carrier reps and said, because I knew other people had Walmarts. I called all my carrier reps and said, I know I'm late, but is there any opportunity to get into a pharmacy? And Blue Cross Blue Shield actually gave me a pharmacy late in October. And it was a godsend because the pharmacist that was there had hired me at Walmart back in 1998. And he thought I was the best thing ever. Like he really, he called and called and called. I was working at CVS and he really, really recruited me. And so when I came in there, he was sending them all to me. So that was really good because, I had that really strong relationship with him. And then on October the 26th, I went to bed that night and I was just praying like, I got to do something. And so it hit me. There had been a guy who had been trying to get me to come work at his PNC agency because he wanted me to sell life insurance. And he kept telling me there's no money in health insurance. You don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
People say that.
People say that all the time. Every time I hear somebody say that, I probably hear that probably once a week from somebody that's new, that's getting into the business. And they're like, well, I talked to so-and-so and they do life insurance and they do final expense. And they said, there's no money in Medicare. I'm like, could have fooled me.
So I don't even correct them anymore. I'm like, you know what, Mr. PNC, you are right.
You're so right.
I do this for a mercy of God. Like just send it to me. Just, it's volunteer efforts. Just send them over here.
Call me licensed Mother Teresa.
Exactly. So I went to bed that night and I was like, God, I gotta do something. And so I was sitting there watching the clock and I actually saw the clock turn to 1 o'clock. And all of a sudden it hit me. This guy has been asking me to come do life insurance in his office. And so I've been over there multiple times. and I see that he has a couple of empty offices in the back. And at this point, I have 3 clients, 3, but he doesn't know that. So I get up the next morning and I'm so excited. I couldn't even sleep. I can still remember just being like amped. And so I walked in there and I said, hey, you got a few minutes to talk to me? And he's like, yeah, sure. And I said, I want to increase your walk-in business. He goes, how? And I said, well, you're asking me to come in here and sell life insurance. You don't do health insurance. What if I came in here and I used one of those empty offices in the back and I worked your book of T65s to keep them in-house? They're not going to know that I don't work for you. But what they will know is that they come here to do all their insurance business. And he kind of looked at me and I said, you're not doing health insurance. So they go to the guy up the street. The guy up the street that does Medicare also does P&C. So he's going to quote their house, their boat, their life. But if you let me work your T65s, I'm going to see them all here. So not only will I see your people and keep them here, I'll see all of my clients here too. Didn't tell him all was 3. He was like, brilliant. You can start tomorrow. So he gave me an office. I didn't pay for an office for the first year. He gave me an office, and then as many postcards as I could write to his T65s, he provided the postcards. And so I sent out his branded postcards, and it just said, do your Medicare in a place that you already know and trust. And it had my information on it. And so I printed those on my HP printer at home. Like they were his brand, but I figured out how to put them in the hopper and run them through like 6 at the time because it would jam it up. And I definitely couldn't afford a print, to go have them professionally printed. And so I had to pay for my ink and I had to pay for my stamps. And so that was gold. I didn't have to go to people's houses. I still went to some, but I got to work a very large P&C book, right? And, when people would walk in, they'd send them back to me. And if I wasn't there, they'd make an appointment, text me and be like, hey, you got somebody coming or whatever. So that was amazing. And then I worked with Messer Financial, and that year they actually gave me 28 leads, right? So I worked those 28 leads. I called them and I wrote 13 of them. And then I wrote a spouse off of one. And so I was so embarrassed because I thought that I just didn't know. I was embarrassed because I thought their expectation was these 28 people want insurance, you need to write them. And so I didn't call and tell them that I had finished them because I was too embarrassed to tell them that I'd only written 13 plus a spouse.
Little did you know you're killing it. And they're like, Buffie, Bain.
Well, they didn't even know until late in the season. And then they were like, you wrote all of those? And I was like, yeah, I'm really sorry. And he was like, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call me so I could get you some more? And I was like, I just felt so guilty about it. I didn't want you to invest any more money in it because I wasn't any good at it. And he kind of laughed, but I, honest to God, didn't know. And I was really, I spent the whole AEP so embarrassed of my poor performance with those leads that I just wrote them off. And I was like, I'm never buying leads. That's not going to be my business model because I'm not any good at it. And I've never bought any more. Those were the only ones I've ever had. I've never bought any.
Yeah. Yeah. It's remarkable too. I've always told people with leads that the average closing percentage of an actual lead that you buy from a vendor lead is usually 20%, so to close 13 out of 28 is such an amazing performance, Mark. It's so above that.
These were lead concepts, and so they were really good leads.
Shout out Chris. Shout out Chris Weir. So fast forward, right? So you're in this office. How long does that last?
It lasted right at a year. And I had started picking up, and they were your normal PNC office, right? When it was 4:57, they were standing by the door. They were ready to get out of there. Well, I'm working T65s. And so when I had somebody that just got off work at 5 and they needed to see me, then that wouldn't work out. And I was having to meet them somewhere. And so I had a friend that told me about this really tiny window on the first floor of a big office building. It was a really tiny office with no windows. I want to say it was 8 by 12. It was less than 100 square foot. It was tiny. And I had to go and buy those mirrors that looked like windows so that I wouldn't go bananas in there. But I loved it. And I stayed in there for 5 years, and I would still probably be in there right now, but our building got flooded last Christmas. And so they forced me upstairs to a bigger office that has a window that looks over the uptown area. And I was like, oh man, this is what I've been missing, because it's so nice not to, be dark all day.
So if anybody's watching this, right, and let's say they're going into their first AEP, right? We're at the time of recording this, we're just around the corner from September. AEP is going to be here before we know it. What advice would you give to a new agent about what does it take to write a lot of business during AEP? I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but I remember, I think it was last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was an AEP that you had surgery and you still cranked out like $150 or something like that, right? Like, it wasn't something like that?
Yes, it was AEP of 21, and I still was right at 200.
That's so crazy. So obviously you're somebody that knows how to put up points on the board.
I gotta tell you this. When I came home from surgery, they told me I'd be out of work for 12 weeks. So my husband came in and he put this desk I'm sitting at, he put it up on 2 Rubbermaid totes so that I could stand up and work. And the next day I wrote 15. That's the truth.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So what advice would you give to an agent that's going into their first AEP? Like, what if somebody wants to put points on the board like Buffie Bain? What advice would you give to that person? They're going in their first AEP.
So you always have to remember that it's either going to be elbow grease, it's going to be hard work, pounding the streets, or money, right? And so most people that are coming into the business don't have money. And I did have the luxury. My husband has always been our breadwinner. And so if I fell on my face, it didn't really matter because, he was accustomed to me bringing in, 17 hours a week of pharmacy tech pay. And I always used that to pay my car payment, and I paid and my daughter's dance. You got a daughter, you just wait till she gets in dance. That's like another mortgage. And so my husband used to always say, why can't she play ball at the rec? It's cheaper. But so he was used to me paying those 2 bills. And so if I fell flat on my face, he could still make my car payment and, send our daughter to dance. So that gave a lot of it gave me a lot of confidence to be able to just do my thing at my own pace. And so I think that coming in your first year, you have to have really realistic expectations. And I talked to somebody recently who is brand spanking new. And I think that maybe they've heard a lot of agents saying things like, well, I'm not writing PDPs. And I remember my very first year, I heard somebody say, I would never rewrite a PDP. And I literally laughed. I was like, I just came from making less than $20 an hour. I can make 30 some dollars in 15 minutes. Line them bad boys up. I'll write them. And so I did. I wrote a ton of PDPs my first year. And every person that you write is somebody that's going to go out and, tell another person about you, hopefully, if you treat them well. And so don't turn down business. Don't be too good to write anything. If you're writing those PDPs on my computer, it was my first year. I had 2 tabs open because back then we used Medicare.gov. I had Medicare.gov. I'll crank out that PDP and I'd say, now on that plan G you've got, how much are you paying for it? And I just had their drug list. So I knew whether or not they could go through underwriting or not, right? Yeah. And so I'd be like, well, I can redo that for you. And so I would almost immediately get that supplement. And so, once you get that PDP, if they've got somebody who's not really servicing them, it's easy to get that supplement. Christian and I were just having this conversation that if you're going into AEP and you don't have a lot of money, calling carriers when you don't have any history with them is, not something that is feasible, really.
Yeah,
And so
for
you
sure.
have to make a way to make your own money. And so right now, sell some cancer policies, sell some dental policies, do what you can do that gets paid out right now, and fund your own AEP. And, you know, there's so many places that you can get free business. Right now it's festival season. There's probably a healthcare expo everywhere you turn. All you need is a name tag and a stack of business cards, and usually a $25 gift card for their door prize will get you in, and you can go in and, I've never really gotten a lot of business from a senior expo. To me, it's kind of like a grab and dash,
Yeah.
but for the
Adult trick or treat.
yeah, the networking with the other professionals that are there. And I will tell you, when you go, make sure you have a name badge. You can get one for $20 off of Amazon. It just gives you a little bit of the validity. I got choked on that one, right? And so you want to have a little bit of credit, that
Yeah.
you're not just there. And so that doesn't cost very much to do. Go to your pharmacies and, let them know what you do. And I always tell people, do not walk in there and say, I am a poor, pathetic first year insurance agent, and I really need your help. You need to remember that you're walking on to these people's jobs. They're working, and you just stopped them to ask them to help you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to bode well. You need to go in there and tell them how you can help them. You're going in to offer help. You're going in to say, I know that this insurance season coincides with your cold and cough season, and you guys are getting killed. Here's my card. When you've got insurance questions, let me take that off your plate. I go in with a basket. I go to the Dollar General, or the Dollar Tree, actually, the $1.25 tree now, right? But I get like the little plastic bins. They have them just about for every season, like pumpkins, Easter baskets, and those type things. And I get those, and I fill them full of things that are like bite size. And I take them into the pharmacy, and I go in and I say, hey, I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I'm Buffie Bain. We have a lot of mutual clients, and people are always telling me what a good job you do. So I just want to tell you, thank you for taking good care of my clients. And I've got some ink pens and some sticky notes and some business cards, and, some things in that basket that are just a bite of something. And when you go in like that, you're going to be in front of them, and you're not asking them for help. You're just letting them know what you do, right?
Yep.
And so when you make your basket, and I've had people push back on me for years, but, unless you've worked in the pharmacy, you wouldn't get it. I have people tell me all the time, I take donuts into the pharmacy and they love it. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. But the very first time that you go in there and you take donuts and they all walk over there and get one, and 3 minutes later, DHEC walks in and they're all standing there with a sticky, wet donut, you are going to become public enemy number one, and you just shut down a referral source. And you also have to think they are filling prescriptions. And do you want somebody to eat a sticky donut or a slice of pizza while they're filling your prescription? No. So I recommend that you take dry things. In mine, at the Dollar General, they have little Lance crackers that are like 4-pack. And so that's just a bite, right? I do lots of like little fun size Snickers. I do the little small trail mixes, or I can't remember what brand it is, but they're in a green packet. It's like 100-calorie pack of like almonds, things like that. And when you do things like that, that basket's going to last a week or more. So you're going to be in their presence for a whole week. They're going to be digging in your basket for a whole week. They're going to remember you, as to where if you take a box of donuts in there and everybody gets a donut and they throw that box that has your business card taped on it, you were only in their face for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So much gold there. That was so good. There's so many things I wanted to comment on, but one thing in particular was writing the business that, is available to you is such a great suggestion. I can't think of how many times as when I was out in the field in my early years as an agent that I'd run into somebody that was on the lowest med sup, or maybe they had health problems and we couldn't move them off of the med sup or something like that. And I would still write the AEP only, or the PDP only, I mean, and they'd send referrals. Maybe something changed a year for later. Maybe there's a new med sup available that would take their condition, or maybe, maybe they were in the hospital like in the last 30 days and then a year goes by and it's a little bit easier. There's med sup that's lenient or something. Like, we would be able to either go back and get the sup later. Maybe they want to change to a Medicare Advantage plan later. You're able to write that person. Like, none of that would happen if you didn't take the PDP for $30 commission and write that business. I also remember during COVID, I was working exclusively from home and I was dialing leads on live stream in the early days of Six Figure Medicare Agent. And I was trying to show people, like, listen, this isn't that hard. Sell over the phone. You don't have to shut your business down. And I sold like several dental plans in a row. Like, I wasn't able to get anything anywhere else, but I was selling dental plans. And people were like, oh, you're all you got was some dental plans. I'm like, those dental plans pay probably like $100 to $150 first year commissions, maybe more. And I'm like, and I just wrote 3 of them. So I'm like, I basically just wrote a true up, or a Medicare Advantage plan. And you don't know who's going to refer you what later. Like, I just think selling what you can get is such a great philosophy, and it's definitely served me well.
One of my best referral sources came from a PDP. A lady had made an appointment with me she wanted her drug plan changed. So she came in and she didn't have a drug plan at all. She had a South Carolina state PIVA plan, which is our federal, it's our state retiree. And she would have really been making a mistake because of some of her conditions. And I told her, I said, you don't need to do this, and you don't need to keep going to insurance agents trying to get it done, because you're going to come across one that'll do it and you're going to be in a mess. And this is why you don't need to do it, because she didn't have a donut hole. So all of her friends at the beauty shop was telling her that all of their tier 1 prescriptions were free. Well, hers were $4, and they were like, no, yours should be free. But what they didn't understand was that she also was on Eliquis. She was on a couple of insulins, and this was back before the $35 cap, and she didn't have a donut hole, and she had an integrated policy. And I think it was like once she hit $3,000 total, that was her moot. And I was like, you would really be making a bad mistake. And if you keep going and searching, you're going to find somebody that's going to do it for you, because either they don't know any better themselves, or it's not going to be their devastation. And so she went home and told her daughter, and her daughter came back. And I remember thinking, Lord, this is 2 hours, and I'm not going to make anything, but it was the right thing to do. And so I sat down and went back over it all. And her daughter was the administrator of a medical facility. And so they actually advertise still for me every year during AEP.
It's awesome. That's awesome. And that's exactly it. You never know who's going to be the best referral partner. You never know who's going to be like tripping into a gold mine, that relationship. Like, I'll never forget, there was a lady I cold called in the early days. Yes, I used to cold call in the early days, everybody, compliantly for MedSup, by the way. And this lady I bumped into, I called for her husband. She was like 60. She was too young, but she was working in this business, and she was like their HR manager. And there was this little tiny corporate office that had like 30, 40 people working in this corporate office. And I did the plan for her husband. She basically handled everything. She was the decision maker. She was like basically like telling him what to do and be like, sign this, sign that. And she ended up bringing me up several times a year for a few years and doing presentations for all their people. And they had so many people working in that office that were over 65, and their group plan sucked. And so instead of taking the group plan when they turned 65, they all would get onto Medicare and they'd send them to me. I ended up writing like 12 to 15 people in this office in like a year or two. It was absolutely crazy. So like, I think that is such great advice that like, don't be too good to write something, help somebody do the right thing. And you never know what can happen.
So I have tried to run my business off of the motto that I'm going to treat every customer and every colleague the way that I want to be treated. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I was in Walmart for 5 years, and, I've got that big thing behind me that says Humana, Aetna, whatever.
Yeah.
And so people would come up and they'd say, well, I've got a Humana card. And my dad sold mobile homes when I was growing up. So I understood what it's like to have a commission-based income. And I understood what it was like for people to come in on Saturday to look at a mobile home and take 3 hours of a salesman's time and then come back on Wednesday when he's off and write with another guy. I've literally seen a guy jack another guy up against the file cabinets for that. And so I shout out to Charlie, right? So I know that those people just don't understand. I know that they don't. And so I try to be respectful of my colleagues. And if somebody comes up and they say, like, I've got a Humana card, I always say, where'd you get that from? So if it's somebody that like I know, I'm like, oh, well, I know her. Like, that's your agent. I do the same thing she does. If you want to stay with her, then you have to take that to her. And they'll always say, oh, well, thank you. And then I will actually shoot her a text and say, Miss So-and-so stopped by. You may want to reach out to her. And because I've facilitated those types of relationships last year, I started running out of Devoted. Devoted was new here. And I started running out of Devoted enrollment kits because, I was just having it like on a tear for a few days. And I was able to call one of my colleagues and say, they're not associated with me. They're actually with Agent Pipeline. And I was able to say, hey, can I come and get a box of those? And he actually was like, do you need me to bring them to you? And I said, no, I'll come get them. I have to go to the post office. So I actually had to go get one 2 days later. 3 days, they gave me 2 boxes. That really doesn't happen most of the time because it's so cutthroat between each other. And so I would also encourage a new agent to never be cutthroat. There's so much more grass than what one person can mow. And so just make sure that you do the right thing by every person, colleague, and client alike, and the money will come. You can be really bad at this and still make a decent living. Honest to goodness. And just always do the right thing. And it'll come back to you tenfold. And take opportunities to get into the community with the volunteering and things like that without having commission breath. There's nothing worse than somebody out delivering Meals on Wheels, like shoving cards in people's faces, right?
Yeah.
Like, just go with the intention of giving and it'll just come back to you. If you have your Ask Me About Your Medicare shirt on and somebody asks you about it, that's different. But I've seen people at, real true volunteer events almost tackling people. And, it's not a good look and it doesn't look professional. And you'll just get so much more business by just that organically, being out there and saying, okay, well, I know that Buffie does Medicare. And so that would be a huge way to build your business. Seeing your pharmacies, writing what comes to you. Also, keep your political views and things like that could be off-putting off of Facebook.
Yep.
Don't take my advice if it offends you. But if it's your Facebook and you want to do what you want to do, just understand that you're going to isolate half the public, right?
Yep.
So keep it off. And make sure that everybody knows what you do. Just make sure everybody knows what you do. That's another really big thing because, I have gotten a lot of inbox messages like, hey, can you help my mom? And it's because they know what I do.
Yep, absolutely. 100%. Buffy, I want to be respectful of your time. Where is the best place that people can connect with you if they watch this and they're just like, Buffy was awesome. I just love the information. Is there a good place that they can touch base with you?
They can look me up on Facebook, just Buffy Bain on Facebook.
Good old Facebook. Yes. Buffy, thank you for your time today. This was awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing your insight and your knowledge and being willing to kind of come on and do this.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course, the pleasure is all mine. I mean, you already know this, but you're one of my favorite people that there is. And I'm really glad we were able to make this happen. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor. The only way I'll know about it is if you smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Helps so many more agents just like you who need to hear this information to find it easier. Comment your thoughts down below. Did you like this video? Did you not like the video? I want to hear it all. And make sure to subscribe for future videos, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you later.